The year was 1913. The 18,000 residents of the city enjoyed their newest playground, Julia Davis Park, and marveled at Phase 1 of the new state capitol building. And at the request of Henry Ford, Harry Bryant, Ford's brother-in-law, arrived to take charge of the new Ford Motor Manufacturing plant in Boise. Truck chassis were shipped from Ford's plant in Michigan, assembled locally and shipped throughout the western region. At that time, auto dealerships were known as agencies. Some of the Bryant Agency's earliest customers were employees of a new construction company in Boise known as Morrison Knudsen. The Ford Model T came in any color you wanted, as long as it was black. Black paint dried faster, and considering America's appetite for this new form of transportation, longer drying times was a luxury the Ford Motor Company could not afford. By 1925, over 15 million had been sold, and the Bryant family could boast the largest Ford agency in the state of Idaho. Both the city and the state continued to grow, and with growth came change. The Union Pacific established rail service to Boise, and the iconic depot opens to a city that has officially arrived. In the late 1930s, one had to look no further than the new airport to see proof that progress had come to Idaho's capital city. Formerly situated alongside what was then the young Boise Junior College campus, the airport featured the longest runway in the nation. At the local Ford dealership, a more sophisticated and experienced consumer wanted durability, comfort, and speed in their cars, especially for trips to Idaho's mountains and lakes. That car was Ford's V8 Cabriolet, with a heart-stopping top speed of 100 miles per hour and a price tag of $590. Around the same time, a local man named Joe Albertson opened his first store at 16th and State, and another entrepreneur purchased the local Ford dealership begun by the Ford family. For over 3 decades, the Grove Street location of the Roy C. Davidson Company proudly displayed as many as 2 to 3 vehicles in its showroom. In 1942, America became involved in its Second World War. Boise no longer held the crown as Idaho's largest city. That distinction went to a naval training station at Farragut in North Idaho. The war also halted production of all civilian vehicles. Like other U.S. dealers, the Roy C. Davidson Company was in a dilemma. Detroit was shipping no new cars. Any vehicles that remained were put on a strict price cap. For the first time ever, replacement parts were scarce. And on a more personal level, critical personnel were leaving the dealership to serve our nation in the armed forces. The challenge for Davidson Ford became keeping the cars and trucks on the road up and running. The service department became more important than ever, and those who remained became masters of creative mechanics. Administrative and sales personnel chipped in as scavengers for any parts that could be used or restored for repairs. It would remain a challenge to keep the doors open until production resumed in 1945. Throughout the following years until the 60s, the population of the state continued to grow to nearly 700,000 and would gain an additional 46,000 residents by the start of the next decade. Boise's population was closing in on 35,000. The small, unpretentious city was in the very early days of becoming discovered. One of the visionaries who saw the Treasure Valley's potential was an energetic businessman by the name of Robert Rice. On December 23, 1964, Roy C. Davidson and Company became Bob Rice Ford. At that time, the Ford lots were spread throughout downtown, so to make it more convenient for customers and the 52 employees, Rice purchased 8 acres of land along the Boise River from Boise Cascade. On the first day of 1968, the place where Main Street ends and Ford Country begins opened its doors. The new dealership brought selection that astonished locals. Its only rival for a comparable variety would be multi-brand auto malls. To help bring even more attention, Rice introduced the 1964 Mustang to an enthralled audience of car fans. Adding to the natural appeal of the area, in the spring of 1971, nearly 27,000 acres of land along the Snake River was dedicated as the Snake River Birds of Prey Natural Area. And in 1984, the World Center for Birds of Prey was established. In June of 1974, near Twin Falls, Evel Knievel attempted to jump the Snake River Canyon. And in 1977, the Idaho Shakespeare Festival would take the stage for the first time in an outdoor amphitheater located in the middle of downtown. In 2000, the capital city's Ford dealership was to make a change in name and ultimately in location. Bob Rice Ford became Lithia Ford of Boise. What had begun as a small dealership operated by the DeBoer family in Ashland, Oregon in 1946 has become one of the largest and most successful groups of dealerships in America. With a desire to build a new, modern facility and become more centrally located to the expanding population, Lithia Ford moved west from 30th and Main to its present location at Fairview and Maple Grove. When Bob Rice became Lithia Ford of Boise, Lithia understood they weren't just buying a business. They were joining a community and inheriting a precious legacy founded by the Ford, Davidson, and Rice families. Lithia immediately embraced the community as they have done in every city they call home. While they have supported numerous endeavors, perhaps the one that gives them most pride occurred in 2009. In keeping with the spirit of generosity that has been a hallmark of Boise's Ford dealerships, Lithia Ford of Boise became a presenting sponsor and provided vehicles and volunteers to support the Special Olympics Winter Games, considered the most successful in history. Throughout 2013 and 14, Boise celebrated its sesquicentennial. For more than 100 of those years, the name Ford has been a part of Boise and the Treasure Valley. And although the names of the dealerships have changed, every company that's carried the name Ford in Boise has worn it with pride, knowing that they are part of a great tradition. From Bryant to Roy C. Davidson to Bob Rice Ford to Lithia Ford of Boise, the legacy of excellence carries on at the place where Ford begins in Idaho.